Exactly. Star Parker is with us for the next few minutes here on the program. Star's a pro-family activist. She loves the Lord. She writes, speaks, and communicates on television, radio, internet, all over, promoting the Christian value
She does a
system.
whole different kind of cooking. She
Yeah.
keeps folks on the hot seat because she can ask some great pointed
You
questions.
thought of that pretty quick, Jim. Uh,
I have my moments.
the Star, welcome to our program.
Well, it's good to be with the both of you. And Jim, it's full figure now.
Full
Or
figure.
voluptuous.
Voluptuous? Well, I'm not sure.
I have
I'm
a
not
sign
sure
in my kitchen
voluptuous
that says,
man's
"Never
barbecue.
Never trust a skinny cook.
There you go.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Like Jim said, I don't know if voluptuous man's barbecue is going to help him sell anything in Mississippi. But anyway, how are you doing, Star?
I'm well, doing very, very good. I'm actually taking a few days myself, so I'm here in Southern California. And June gloom is a little longer this time, I guess, because it's still a little gloomy out here, but it's always good to see my grandchildren.
Absolutely. Hey, tell us what you think of what happened last week with the Supreme Court. There are two decisions. One was strike down the Defense of Marriage Act, and the second one was to not rule on Prop 8 in California, which, for technical reasons, they didn't rule on that, but which left, though, the 30-plus states that have constitutional amendments protecting marriage as between a man and a woman, left those intact. So what do you think about the mixed bag we got last week?
Well, I'm doing a show now with your cousin stations, Urban Family Talk, and it's an amazing opportunity to get down deeper into some of the challenges confronting us as a nation with a particular people group who doesn't understand some of the challenges and how our public lives are touched by public policy. And what we saw last week was a witness to this. We put people in power. We allow for legislators judges to become enshrined, if you will, and appointed at a certain point. We've had a chance to vote. And then they bring forth decisions that affect all of our lives. But at the end of the day, I think that the decisions were about religion, not necessarily marriage. And I think that Christianity in this country is in trouble. It's only a matter of time before even the states that have protected marriage between a man and a woman, it's only a matter of time before that will be thrown out. We saw at 150 years ago an attempt in this country to say maybe we can leave slavery into the states to decide. And we end up in a great war. There's some issues, there's some opportunities that are just bigger than states' rights and elections. They're moral issues. And I think that this is what we have seen is the opportunity for the left, the hard left, to enshrine into our national psyche, our mainstream, a behavior that God says don't do. So the window of opportunity is to get our kids out of these horrible cesspools we call schools, get them into schools where men take seriously the Bible, and women, of course, and start over. We've got to start again with those little 5-year-old minds and start conditioning them in a biblical worldview. I'm not seeing a bright light in what happened last week at all.
This is today's issues. Our guest is Star Parker. Star, you said in the midst of that statement that you felt like last week's decision was more about religion. Would you unpack that a little more?
Well, when you think about defining marriage between a man and a woman, why would we do that outside of a biblical worldview that says that God, in the beginning of time, created the male and female, and then he goes on to explain why he did this. And when you look at that type of philosophy in the New Testament, when Jesus Christ himself defined marriage, he reached into the old scripture and said, for this cause, a man will leave his father and mother, not his mother and mother, not his dad and dad, and go and cleave to a wife, and the two will be joined as one. So it's the biblical worldview that is under attack. What has happened as a result of these decisions is not necessarily marriage and relationship. It's, did God really say? I mean, it's the same question the serpent asked Eve. Are you sure? And that's what's going to happen now. We have separated ourselves as a society, those that are secular and those that are, believe in the sacred. And it's going to be much more difficult for Christians to express their worldview in this new environment that has reduced our religion to theory.
How do you think we can get, now you mentioned also getting and beginning to educate the children with a biblical worldview, with the public education system where it is now? How do we combat that?
I think you get your kids out of the public education. So this was the challenge for Christians. You know, we've been talking about our Every Family Talk, the scripture where the psalmist wrote in 11, if the foundations are destroyed, what will the righteous do? And I think that what the righteous should do at this point is leave those public schools. To fight for any type of reform there, how do you think we got here? Mm-hmm. They took our classrooms. They took our media. Our culture now as a result of that, and public policy then begins to reflect the public opinion. It's a round circle: public policy, public behavior, public opinion. And if you listen to these homosexuals, they clearly say, we changed our agenda about 20 years ago because our strategy then wasn't working. And it wasn't. They were prancing themselves through major streets in major cities nude. They were vulgar and in your face, and the people rejected that behavior. So what they did was mainstreamed it. They went into the classrooms and started talking to kindergartners, and they went into our homes through our media and made us laugh and think that this is just normal behavior. Then they started coming out of the closet so that each and every one of us knows somebody that's engaged in homosexuality. Well, how do you turn on someone you like? How do you turn on someone you love? And over time, they have changed public opinion on homosexuality, and now we end up with public policy that's reflective of that opinion.
And we know there are many Christian teachers in public schools.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you asked her a question, she gave you an answer.
Right.
But I just wanted people to know.
Well, that's the problem right there. When we passed homosexual marriage, what they call gay history here in the school, I didn't see a revolt. Now, in California, we have one of two options to think about. We can say, wow, we have no Christian history teachers in the whole school system of California. Or we can say, now that's interesting. I wonder how the Christians are going to get around teaching gay history. See, the challenge for us, and I think that this is what God is doing to us as a body of believers, to allow for this type of darkness to keep getting worse and worse and worse, so that we will finally look up and say, who are we and what do we really believe? Because at some point, just take Hitler's Germany, there had to be some Christians that thought, well, I'm just not sure I should keep my job over this one. I mean, at what point do we think that we should stand up for our Christianity? At what point do we become what we saw in Disciples, where they became martyrs? We're not even being asked to do that. We are in a very fruitful land. We're in a very prosperous place. God has blessed us tremendously. I mean, I was just looking at my own life and coming home out of, dark Washington, D.C. to get to Southern California, thinking about my own history, living 7 years in and out of a welfare state, living recklessly at the hand of the devil until Christian conversion occurred in my life. And now looking where he has brought me today, we're not being asked much in America as Christian people. The economy collapses and everybody they elect the left. This is not Christianity. I think that the teachers in the public school system have decisions to make, unless they just want to keep going this way. I mean, at a certain point, you have to say, well, how dark do I allow it to get? Before I look in the mirror and say I'm part of the problem.
Wow.
Look at the babies. Come on, abortion, $500 million. We know now. Where's the outcry after Gosnell? I think the reason that we have this homosexual spirit so unleashed on us today is because the secret sin of abortion has been going on for now 40 years. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that in the 40th year we not only get Gosnell, but we get gay marriage. God is trying to tell us something about ourselves and say, I think maybe we've misplaced a little bit of our treasure.
Yeah,
and thinking of what's important.
Talking to Star Parker on the program. Her website is urbancure.org. Urbancure.org is Star's website. What do we do? I have a little different opinion than some people, even Christian leaders and pro-family leaders, on what's happening in our country. And it sounds like I'm exonerating us, the Christian community, and I'm not. But when you look at what's happening in our popular culture, and it's also reflected in our liberal politics that we've adopted here in much of America, not all of America, much of America. And you see a fellow reelected after a failing economy, being the most pro-abortion president in our history, being for homosexual marriage, secular progressive is how he is identified. Progressive means liberal. All those things on a national level, at least. When you look at what's happening in our society, I say, I ask the question this, I don't fault the Christian community for where we are with our politics. We only have a vote, okay? There's not enough of us.
Yeah.
All right? We don't outnumber the general population. They vote too. And if they're secular minded, if they don't care about morals and values, we can't outvote them. All right. So,
but that's where.
It
is our fault, though, Tim. It is our fault because when you think about where we do have our lives touched, it's
what now?
in
I didn't
education.
hear that part.
She said
the
it was
only
our
place
fault.
Our lives touch as young minds are being shaped, and I fault the Christian community because we allowed for a secular government to take over educating our children.
Could you restart that answer? We had a bit of technical difficulty, and Tim wasn't able to hear you.
Yeah, you were disagreeing with me. I said it's not Christians' fault, and you said it is.
It is our fault because we allowed for education to be taken over by the secular left. Before we get opportunity to go in the voting booth, we can't go in the voting booth till you're 18 years old. But up until that 18th year, we have allowed for the left to take over the minds of our children. You know, when you think about expressions of worship, you have to have a sanctuary. We have churches, they have classrooms, and we've allowed for this to happen in our society. Send in our children. The scripture is clear. Train a child in the way they should go. So when they're old, they won't depart from that. The scripture is clear about transferring values. The scripture is clear that says, do not remove the ancient landmarks. And what we've grown accustomed to doing is going to church on Sunday morning and Wednesday night and turning our children over to a secular environment where we know what has been happening there. It was in the 60s that they threw out school prayer. It was in the 60s that they said no more Lord's Prayer. It was then by the 80s when they said the Ten Commandments, we should have said we're out of here. But did we? No. What do the most Americans do? What do most Christian Americans do? They say, well, we know that in some places school is not really cool, but my school's great. I love my child's teacher. And over time, they understand what's going on in those classrooms. They know what's happening in that environment. You know, we've had the Department of Education since 1979. They didn't start manipulating the minds of our children. Then, in fact, if you look into the history of what's his name, Mann and others that they allowed to secularize our and pull us all together in one secularized government environment to educate our children, you didn't see an outcry. The end result of our political life and the minds and the culture of the people are because of our public schools. That is the only place our lives touch. That is the only place our lives are
I think the media, the entertainment industries had much more of an influence than the school system.
When the media isn't forced, the media is not forced. You don't have to do that.
No, but they permeate. I'm just saying they permeate the popular culture with movies and night after night of television programs, and
the TV's become the babysitter,
and the music and the whole entertainment culture. I mean, it's just all anti-God. No, not all, but most of it's just anti-God.
You're right, but that always has been, and I think that there are opportunities for people that want to get out of the structure of mainstream to go into that environment. But that environment you can control, but school you can't. And I think that even in the media, it's reflective of the culture as well, things that we're allowing to happen in our so-called public educational system. Yeah. This is a forced environment. I can appreciate what you're saying. And, yes, the culture has changed over time, listening to media, but when you think about the entertainment world and or cultural opportunities to change your view or question,
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying your average math teacher is not trying to lead children on the wrong path. Is what I'm saying.
I don't know that that's true. I can't. I can't.
I don't agree with you on
you
that.
Look into these curriculums these days. I just can't agree with you anymore. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
We'll just agree to disagree then here.
Yeah, I just think
I think we agree. We just differ on degrees, as it were. Star Parker arguing with Tim Wildman on today's issues on the American Family Radio. Now, hey, we're trying to liven it up here, folks. So
Right.
you'll listen. No, I respect Star, and she's got strong opinions.
She
and
has,
that's why we invited her on the
some
program.
valid points,
and
and
she's very
But we're
well
all
at
trying to assess what happened.
defending her position. We have, you mentioned earlier, we have a outreach now within the American Family Association, Urban Family Communications, and Mickey and Will
Mickey and
Addison,
Will Addison.
Are helping head that up, and they're working with STAR and with other Christian leaders in the African American community. There is I was looking at your website, urbancure.org. There is a movement going on within the African American community, with more and more people, coming forward saying, "Hey, listen, I believe in traditional values. I'm tired of being, lumped in with some of these quote civil rights leaders that are promoting secular progressivism and liberalism." So there's a rising generation of leaders in the black community that are breaking from the past. How do you see that going?
It's moving along slowly but consistently. You're absolutely right. At a certain point, you have to open your eyes. You have to say, wait a minute, something else has happened. We cannot pretend any longer that all the ills of a black community are a result of slavery, a history of slavery and or Jim Crow. Because when you fast forward to today, we're seeing challenges and pathologies that were not occurring even during slavery and or Jim Crow. For instance, black family life. It's underappreciated that during the 60s, the black family was still very healthy. 70% of black children were raised in marital households. Today, it's exactly the opposite. So you cannot say this is a result of slavery. So many other blacks are starting to ask deeper questions. We're starting to see pastors ask deeper questions. They allowed for their congregants to go out and elect a man that they knew was hard left, and now they're seeing results. They're seeing that he ignored their pleas to not push homosexuality, and what he did instead, Barack Obama, went in their face, and the first president in history of this country to say, I legitimize this behavior. They're becoming very uncomfortable because there are many of us activists that have been pushing out what has happened in terms of abortion in the black community. So they're appalled by what they see, and they're beginning to change. CURE works very closely with the pastor network. We're attempting to get them to reestablish schools so that they can break this cultural mindset that's in our community and start putting biblical principles into these young children again. And we're starting to see them come more vocal in terms of political world as well. They're starting to speak out. So we're seeing little things all over the country. We're starting to see where there are Republicans in charge of different states. Governors of different states, the black community rallied those Republican governors in different efforts, like what's happening down in Texas for the protection of life, with abortion law. We're starting to see school choice movements all over the country, like what happened up in Indiana, where the whole state now has opportunity to pull their children out of government schools and put them in schools that they would prefer, including Christian schools. So there are glimmers of light. It's still hard work. It's still some of us wish it would happen faster, some much sooner, but I'm hopeful. I'm starting to see a little bit of light.
Well, this is today's issues. Our guest is Star Parker, Jim alongside Tim. And Star, you're working on a new book.